I was standing in the hospital corridor when those words stopped my heart. "There's a problem with his chart," the nurse said, a voice barely above a whisper, eyes darting nervously between me and the paperwork in her trembling hands. My son, Michael, lay unconscious in the room behind her, tubes and wires connecting him to machines that beeped steadily, the only confirmation that he was still alive. The DNA test I'd insisted on after the accident had come back positive, 99.9% certainty. He was my biological son. So what problem could there possibly be with his chart? The nurse's next words would unravel everything. I thought I knew about my life, my family, and the 23 years I'd spent raising a boy who was somehow both mine and not mine at all. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this nightmare really began. 3 weeks earlier, on what should have been an ordinary Tuesday morning in suburban Chicago, I had just poured my second cup of coffee when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me swipe to accept the call. A woman's voice, professional and detached, informed me that my son had been in a serious car accident. They needed me at Northwestern Memorial Hospital immediately. The world tilted sideways. Michael was supposed to be at his apartment near campus, probably sleeping in after a late night studying for his engineering finals. Instead, he was fighting for his life. The drive downtown was a blur of traffic lights and horn blasts that I barely registered. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Michael, my only child. The boy who'd looked up at me with those bright blue eyes on his first day of kindergarten, terrified and brave all at once. The teenager who'd slam dunked his way through high school basketball championships while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. The young man who called me every Sunday without fail, even though he was too old to need his dad's advice anymore. When I reached the hospital, they directed me to the ICU. A doctor met me outside Michael's room, his expression carefully neutral. In that way medical professionals have when the news is bad but not hopeless. Severe head trauma, internal bleeding. They'd operated to relieve pressure on his brain. The next 48 hours were critical. I could see him, but I needed to prepare myself. Nothing prepares you for seeing your child like that. The machines breathing for him, the bandages, the stillness. I pulled a chair close to his bed and took his hand, careful to avoid the IV line. "I'm here, buddy," I whispered. "Dad's here. You're going to be okay." But as I sat there, watching the ventilator force air into his lungs, something gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. Something the intake nurse had said when I first arrived. She'd asked for Michael's medical history, his allergies, his blood type. When I told her what I knew, she'd paused, glanced at her computer screen, and frowned slightly before typing something and moving on. It was such a small moment that I'd almost forgotten it. Almost 2 days passed in a fog of cafeteria, coffee, and uncomfortable waiting room chairs. My ex-wife Linda had flown in from Seattle. We'd been divorced for 15 years, ever since Michael was 8, but we sat together now in that terrible vigil that only parents of a critically ill child can understand. We didn't talk much. What was there to say? Our relationship had ended badly, accusations and resentments that had faded to a dull ache over the years. But none of that mattered now. On the third day, Michael's condition stabilized enough to take him off the ventilator. He still hadn't regained consciousness, but the doctors were cautiously optimistic. That's when they mentioned needing to do some additional blood work, routine tests to monitor his recovery. And that's when I remembered that odd moment with the intake nurse. "What's Michael's blood type?" I asked the doctor. "Type B negative," he replied, checking the chart. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "That's not right. He's type O positive, same as me." The doctor's eyebrows rose slightly. "Mr. Patterson, I can assure you the lab results are accurate. Your son is definitely B negative." Then the lab made a mistake. "Run it again," he agreed, probably just to placate a stressed father. But when the second test came back with the same result, I insisted on speaking with the head of the lab. That's when things started to get really strange. "Blood types," they explained patiently, "are inherited. With me being O positive and my ex-wife being O positive, there was no genetic possibility of producing a B negative child. None. Zero. Impossible. That one of you isn't his biological parent," the genetic counselor said gently, as if she were explaining basic arithmetic to a slow student. I left that meeting in a daze. It couldn't be true. I'd been there when Michael was born, had cut the umbilical cord myself, had held him when he was seconds old, red-faced and wailing. Linda and I had problems, sure, but she'd never given me any reason to doubt that Michael was mine. And Michael looked like me, everyone said so. He had my nose, my stubborn chin, my way of tilting his head when he was thinking through a problem. But blood types don't lie. The science was simple and brutal in its certainty. I confronted Linda that evening in the hospital parking lot. She'd been about to get in her rental car when I caught up with her, my head spinning with accusations and questions. But before I could say anything, before I could demand answers, I saw her face. She looked confused, then defensive, then absolutely terrified in a way that seemed too genuine to be fake. "What are you talking about?" she said, her voice rising. "Of course he's yours. Are you seriously asking me this? Now, with our son lying in a coma upstairs. The blood types, Linda, they don't match. Genetically, it's impossible." I watched her process this information, saw the color drain from her face. That's insane. There must be some mistake. Lab error, something they tested twice. She stared at me, and I saw something in her eyes I couldn't quite read. Fear, yes, but something else too. Something that looked almost like recognition. We need to do a DNA test, she said finally. Because I'm telling you, David, I never cheated on you. Not once, not ever. The way she said it, with such absolute conviction, made me believe her. But if she hadn't cheated, then what the hell was going on? We arranged for DNA testing through the hospital. I provided a cheek swab. They took a sample from Michael's blood work. The wait for results was supposed to take 3 to 5 business days, but I paid extra for expedited processing. 72 hours. 3 days to know if my entire life was a lie. Those 3 days were their own special kind of hell. Michael regained consciousness on day 2, groggy and confused, but alive. He didn't remember the accident, didn't know why his mother and I were both hovering over him like anxious birds. I wanted to tell him what was happening, but what could I say? Hey son, just checking to see if you're actually mine. So I said nothing, just held his hand and told him to focus on getting better. Linda stayed nearby but kept her distance from me. I caught her crying in the hospital chapel once, her shoulders shaking silently. When she noticed me, she quickly wiped her eyes and walked past without a word. Whatever was happening, it was tearing her apart too. The DNA results came back on a Friday afternoon. I was alone when I opened the sealed envelope, my hands shaking so badly I could barely read the text, but the conclusion was clear enough, printed in bold letters at the bottom of the page. Probability of paternity 99.9%. Michael was my biological son. The relief that flooded through me was so intense I had to sit down. He was mine. Whatever the blood type confusion was about, the DNA didn't lie. He was my boy. I called Linda immediately to tell her the news. She started crying on the phone, sobbing so hard she could barely speak. I told you, she kept saying. I told you I never cheated, but I couldn't let it go. Then explain the blood types, Linda. How is that possible? I don't know, she whispered. I don't know. I took the DNA results to the hospital the next day, planning to show them to Michael and put this whole bizarre episode behind us. He was doing much better, sitting up in bed, eating solid food, cracking jokes with the nurses. He'd always been resilient. My kid always bounced back. That's when the nurse approached me in the corridor, the one with the nervous eyes and trembling hands. Mr. Patterson, I need to speak with you. There's a problem with his chart. My heart, which had just started to settle back into a normal rhythm, kicked into overdrive again. What kind of problem? She glanced around, making sure we were alone. Could we speak somewhere private? We went to a small consultation room, and she closed the door carefully behind us. She was young, maybe 30, with auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her name tag read, Jennifer Brooks, RN. What I'm about to tell you, she began, her voice low and urgent, could cost me my job. But I can't stay silent about this anymore. About what? She took a deep breath. 23 years ago, I was a nursing student doing my clinical rotation in labor and delivery, right here at Northwestern, and I was there the night your son was born. The room suddenly felt very small and airless. I remember it because it was such a chaotic night. There were 3 babies born within an hour of each other. Your wife, another woman from the suburbs, and a third woman who'd come in as an emergency case. No prenatal care, no identification. Just walked in off the street in active labor. We were short-staffed, and things got ... confused. I gripped the edge of the table. What are you saying? I'm saying the babies got mixed up, not switched. Exactly. It was more complicated than that. The unidentified woman, she hemorrhaged badly after delivery. They rushed her into surgery, and her baby ended up in the nursery with all the others. But here's the thing. Her baby was blood type B negative, and when they tried to track down her records later, there was nothing. She'd given a fake name, paid cash, disappeared as soon as she could walk. They never found her. My mind was reeling. You're telling me they gave us the wrong baby? No, she said, and her eyes filled with tears. That's what I've been trying to tell you. The DNA says Michael is your biological son, and I believe that's true. But there's something else going on here, something I saw that night that I've never been able to explain. What did you see? She hesitated, struggling with something. Your wife. She had complications too. They had to do an emergency C-section, and when they brought the baby out, there were 2. The words didn't make sense. To what? 2 babies, twins, but they weren't both yours. I stared at her, unable to process what she was saying. One of them was yours and your wife's. Blood type O positive, just like you'd expect. But the other one, the other baby, he was blood type B negative. And I know this sounds impossible, but I saw the ultrasounds from your wife's pregnancy. There was only ever 1 baby on those scans. Only 1 heartbeat. Only 1 fetus. But 2 babies came out. That's not biologically possible. I know, that's why everyone who was in that room signed ND. The hospital made it all go away. They told your wife she'd been so heavily medicated that she was confused, that there had only ever been 1 baby. They told you the same thing, but I was there, Mr. Patterson. I saw 2 babies. I felt like I was falling through space. Where's the other baby now? That's the thing. The unidentified woman, the one who hemorrhaged, she didn't have a baby when she left the hospital. Her medical records show a live birth, but there was no infant logged into the nursery from her, no birth certificate filed. Nothing. It's like her baby never existed. So you're saying that woman, whoever she was, she left with our baby. Our other baby? Jennifer shook her head. I don't know, maybe, or maybe something else happened, something none of us understood, because here's what I remember most clearly about that night. When those two babies were lying side by side in the warming beds, they looked identical, exactly the same. Same face, same hair, same everything. The only difference was the blood work. A horrible thought was forming in my mind. Michael, the son we took home, which one was he? According to the official records, he was yours and your wife's biological child. Type O positive, that's what the initial footprint identification said. But then later, after all the chaos and the paperwork and the NDAs, somehow Michael's chart got changed to show B negative blood type. I thought it was a clerical error at first, but now, with your DNA results showing he's definitely your biological son, and his blood type being B negative, I think they mixed up more than just the babies that night. My phone rang. Linda's name flashed on the screen. I answered automatically. David, you need to come home right now. Her voice was strange, hollow. There's someone here. He says he's Michael's brother. I ran through the hospital corridors, down the stairs, out to the parking lot. The drive to my house in Evanston took forever and no time at all. Linda was waiting on the front porch when I pulled up, her face pale and shocked. Standing next to her was a young man who looked exactly like my son, exactly like Michael. Same height, same build, same face, same everything. He even had the same small scar on his left eyebrow that Michael got when he fell off his bike at age 7. No, wait, Michael had that scar. This young man's eyebrow was unmarked. Mr. Patterson, he said, stepping forward. His voice was Michael's voice. My name is Marcus, and I think you might be my father too. We went inside. Linda made coffee that no one drank. Marcus sat on my couch and told us a story that seemed too insane to be true. He'd been raised by a single mother who'd always been secretive about his father. She was fiercely private, moved them around a lot, never stayed in one place for long. She homeschooled him, avoided hospitals and official documentation whenever possible. He had no birth certificate, no social security number until he was 18 and petitioned the court for one himself. His mother died 6 months ago, cancer, and in her papers, he found a sealed envelope with his name on it. Inside was a letter explaining everything, how she'd gone to Northwestern Memorial Hospital 23 years ago, in labor, scared and alone, how something impossible had happened during the delivery, how she'd seen 2 babies, identical twins, where there should have been only one, how in the chaos that followed, she'd grabbed one of them and run, terrified that someone would take him away or use him for experiments or who knows what. She was paranoid, Marcus said quietly. She thought there was some kind of conspiracy, some government program or a secret experiment. She never told me the truth because she thought it would put me in danger, but in her letter she wrote down your names, Michael and Linda Patterson. She said she was sorry, said she'd watched from a distance sometimes over the years, made sure Michael was okay, made sure he was being loved and cared for, and she said when she was gone, I should find you, I should know where I came from. Linda was crying openly now. I felt like my brain was short-circuiting, unable to process the magnitude of what I was hearing. The thing is, Marcus continued, I don't know which of us is really yours. My mom's letter said we were both in that delivery room, both babies, but she didn't know which one came from your wife and which one came from wherever the hell the other one came from. She just knew we were identical, and we were both there, and something impossible had happened. I pulled out my phone and showed him the DNA results. Michael is my biological son. It's confirmed. Marcus nodded slowly. Then maybe I'm not. Maybe your wife really did have one baby, and I'm the impossible one, the one who shouldn't exist. He looked at Linda. Unless you want to test me too, see if I'm yours. Linda stared at him, the stranger who wore her son's face. Yes, she whispered. Yes, we need to know. We did the test that week. Cheek swab from Marcus. Blood sample from Linda. Another agonizing wait for results. Marcus stayed in a hotel nearby, and we met for coffee twice. He was studying biology at a community college in Oregon, wanted to be a researcher. He was smart, funny, thoughtful. He reminded me of Michael in 1,000 small ways. The way he stirred his coffee, the way he listened intently when you spoke, the way he laughed at his own jokes. The results came back on a Wednesday. I opened them with Linda and Marcus both present, because whatever the truth was, we all deserved to know it together. Probability of maternity. 99.9% Marcus was Linda's biological son, which meant both boys were ours. Both of them. Genetically impossible, scientifically inexplicable, but undeniably true. We had somehow produced 2 sons from a single pregnancy. Twins who didn't exist on any ultrasound. Brothers with different blood types that should have been genetically impossible given our DNA. Michael came home from the hospital that Friday. We sat him down in the living room, Linda and I on either side of him, and told him he had a twin brother. Then we brought Marcus in from the kitchen where he'd been waiting. The moment they saw each other, both boys froze. It was like watching someone look into a mirror that moved independently. They stared at each other for a long moment, and then Michael started laughing. That big, joyful laugh he'd had since he was a kid, and Marcus laughed too. The same laugh, and suddenly they were hugging like they'd known each other forever instead of never having met. That was 6 months ago. We still don't have answers. We've consulted geneticists, medical researchers, even contacted the hospital to try to find records from that night. Most of it has been destroyed or sealed. The few people who were there that night are either dead, disappeared, or bound by NDAs they refuse to break. Jennifer, the nurse, lost her job for talking to me. She doesn't regret it. Michael and Marcus are inseparable now. They finished out the semester at their respective colleges, but they've both applied to transfer to the same university for next year. They video chat every day, comparing notes on their lives, finding eerie similarities and fascinating differences. Marcus is blood type B negative. Michael is too, even though genetically that shouldn't be possible for Michael. We've given up trying to understand it. Linda and I are cautiously rebuilding a friendship. We talk more now than we did in the last 10 years of our marriage. We're both in therapy, trying to process the reality that we lost a son for 23 years without even knowing he existed, trying to forgive ourselves for not knowing, trying to understand what happened that night. Sometimes I lie awake wondering about the woman who raised Marcus, the one who died, never telling him the truth until it was too late. Was she scared? Was she protecting him? Or was there something more, something darker that she understood and we still don't? Marcus says sometimes he dreams about that night, about being two places at once, about a bright light and a feeling of being torn apart and put back together wrong. The doctors say it's just his mind trying to create memories of an event he couldn't possibly remember. But I'm not so sure. The truth is, I don't know what happened 23 years ago in that delivery room. I don't know if it was a medical miracle, a cosmic anomaly, or something else entirely. What I do know is that I have 2 sons now. 2 brilliant, kind, remarkable young men who somehow both came from Linda and me, who both carry our DNA, who both have our hearts. The nurse was right. There was a problem with the chart. But the real problem wasn't with the paperwork. It was with our understanding of what's possible, of what reality is, of what family means. Michael and Marcus were together last weekend helping me clear out the garage. At one point I looked over and saw them both reaching for the same box at the same time. Their movements perfectly synchronized. They caught each other's eyes and burst out laughing again. That laugh that's identical. That laugh that's distinctly theirs. I don't need to understand how they both exist. I just need to love them both. And I do if this story has touched you in any way, if you've ever questioned the bonds that tie families together or wondered about the mysteries that lie at the heart of our existence. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Share your thoughts, your own inexplicable experiences, your reactions to this journey we've been on. And if you believe, like I've learned to believe, that love is stronger than logic and family is more than just genetics, then please, share this story with others who might need to hear it. Sometimes the most important truths are the ones that don't make sense on paper but make all the sense in the world in your heart. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here.